Welcome, Joshua. I'll give a couple of minutes for folks to join. Welcome. All right, I think we can start. Well, welcome everyone to the Paketo working group meeting. I'm really glad to see you here. All right, so let me share my screen. Feel free to add yourself to attend this list. Totally optional, but it will be nice to see you there. Could we have a note taker, please, for this session?
I can do it.
Thank you, Safi. Okay, share again the link for the notes in case you don't have it handy. Okay. Here it is. Right, new faces. Well, not much. Cool. So let's get started. Review outstanding RFPs. Shorter list. Now, okay, first one, source removal Buildpack.
I think last time we said we were waiting for a utility maintainer to review, but it looks like we got several more reviews, so maybe this is ready to merge.
Yeah, 7 days ago, it has now 6 approvals. So yeah, according to the RFC process, that will be, we will consider approved, right? Ready to be merged. All right. Cool. Just wondering, what would be, I mean, how someone will know that this is, well, yeah, when it's merged, but I was wondering if we want to have labels or use projects just to tag RFCs for the specific stage they are. Um, yeah, just a suggestion for, especially for folks out there to know what's the current status of an RFC. Just looking at the PR. Okay, so this one's ready. Secure runtime environment.
I think this one's in the same state it was last week, where we're still waiting for Sam to come back and add updates. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Do you want me to reach out to him, maybe to remind him of adding updates or?
I know he was on vacation for several weeks, so I can check. I'm happy to do the reaching out because I think he just returned from vacation this week, so it's not shocking that he hasn't got back to this yet.
Right. All right. Thank you. Okay. Next up will be image retention policy.
I had some notes on this one about like the number of images that we'd be retaining based on kind of current trends and usage if we kept the images for 2 years. So that's something that you were waiting to see that's in there now.
I feel like I was the one being a stickler on this, but I feel like I'm pretty well convinced at this point. But the only thing that I'd love, and I left this in a comment just a couple minutes ago, I'd love to just see us call out any depths that we might host separately as well. My straw dog proposal is that once they're orphaned, as soon as no build packs use a dependency, that's when we would clean up the dependency. I think historically, at least in Cloud Foundry build packs, which I know are different because we don't have images there, that ended up creating a sizable amount of cost over time. So I feel like a retention policy hopefully would address the dependencies as well.
Yeah, I think we said last week I needed to rewrite a few things. I haven't got to that yet.
But thanks for the details on the number of images. It's reassuring that at least now I'm like, oh yeah, any of those things. No one should be using those anymore.
Yeah, sorry. Any other comment around this RFC? Okay. Finally, disabling SBOM RFC.
I think this one is just still waiting on getting enough approvals.
Is this one mostly just waiting on me? I feel like I was sort of, I don't have a strong opinion on this one, so I was waiting for you and Dan to reach a consensus, but I'm happy to throw an approval on this. I feel like everything in here is reasonable, so.
Yeah, I approved it. I'm happy with the way it is now.
I'll approve it right now.
Okay, seems like no more RFCs so far. So next up will be, well, leave CMB, 2 updates. Wondering if there's any update or questions around leave CMB. Nope. Okay. If you have anything else to share, discuss, yeah, please add it here. For now, I have a couple of, well, an update and a couple of questions. First update with the mailing list is alive. It was alive since a very long time, seems like, but we were not using it. So I completed a couple of verifications. This tool is under Linux Foundation in general. And it's, it has several features. It's way better than Google Groups. Yeah, feel free to join. If you want to start a thread there, you just need to send a message to main@list.paketo.io. It's a good way to start discussions, and eventually it will be the vehicle to release the newsletter. But yeah, first thing was to have the proper tool to do it. Now we have it. I will be sending the PR to update the community repo to point to the mailing list also. By reading the repo and all that, I had a couple of questions. First one, I was reading here the roles in the governance document, and from what I can read here, it seems like new contributors need to pass through an election process. I mean, if someone out there wants to contribute, I don't know, to fix a typo in documentation, that makes this person a contributor, new contributor. Does it require to pass through an election process by the maintainers?
So a contributor is actually a like elevated status above just contributing to the project. This person is like considered to be connected to a particular language or project group within Paketo, and they have the ability to do things like help to triage issues or open pull requests against the repository without having to create like a fork of the repo. So they have like actually like more elevated permissions than say like an outside contribution. There is no election process or the only real barrier to someone contributing from the outside is signing the CLA. That's kind of the one thing that is maybe a barrier. But this is actually like you've got outside contributor, which isn't really enumerated in the list here. And then you've got this contributor status. And then above that, you have maintainers.
Yeah, we have a tool to, track contributions that classify casual contributors and regular or core contributors. Only we could adopt this kind of messaging. Just to be clear that, yeah, there's no voting process that will prevent someone to be a casual contributor. That's the majority of contributions we have in open source project, casual contributions. All right. That was my first question. Thank you, Ryan. Second one was, here. Speaking of tracking contributions and measuring the health of the project, we use a tool called Bitergia, where we basically track, contributor growth, contributing organizations, and several other metrics, but it's tied to GitHub repos. So the first question that I had, by looking at the Paketo Buildpacks repo is that we have 136 repos there, and I don't have a clue of which repo to track contributions. So I was trying to infer if, for example, it could be something related to this organization. I mean, there are I don't know, repos maintained, .NET repos maintained by these users, I don't know, Forrest, Frankie. So here the document mentions that some teams maintain some set of repos but don't specify which repos. So I'm trying to wonder which repos track in terms of contributions and which are the relevant ones. So probably you don't have an answer for that just now. I will probably file an issue for that. Just to let you know that this is something that will be good to document somewhere. What are the repos that the teams are actually maintaining, and that will be helpful also to measure contributions. Any comment around this? Any question?
I feel like we do maintain most of those repos. Like the way the project works with all the tiny component build packs being added up into larger composite build packs and then builders, we end up like splitting the work across many repos. But there are some tools that can sort of aggregate some of these stats across repos. Like CNCF has an instance of something called DevStats set up.
DevStats.
That does this
That's
for
projects under the CNCF. That's a different discussion.
I feel like they do have steps for how you could sort of use your own instance of DevStats, but it's not like as delightful to just stand up and use as I was hoping it would be when I first read that you could set up your own instance. But I do think it's possible if we wanted to go that direction.
So, David, you mentioned Bitergia. It was my understanding that Cloud Foundry was using this, although I just went to the link where I thought that their actual stats page was, and it appears that the dashboard has been decommissioned sometime in the last month since I last looked at it. So I don't know if they're tracking this, but all the Paketo stuff was actually tracked under that instance. You could actually filter for Paketo, and then you could just see Paketo stats by themselves, separate from the rest of Cloud Foundry. So I don't know. We used to have this and now we don't, and nobody told us that we don't have it anymore.
Yeah, I tried to access, I found that dashboard last week, and yeah, it was the same for me. I wasn't able to access that. But I will work with this CFF thing to see what happened. Probably there I will find the answer for which repos they are actually tracking. Because what we have in hand right now here, at least from the VMware point of view, is Bitergia instance. And we could track all these kind of metrics, but again, the question will be which repos. So yeah, that's an action item for me to actually see if I can pull the answers from the CFF implementation. All right. Thank you. Next up was GitHub reliability.
Yeah, I just wanted to raise this up because we had a particularly rough week last week, and I'm curious how much this is impacting other people. And looking back at their history of the status page, it's there's quite a few incidents over the last couple months, and I'm just wondering how other people feel about this. It's been rather painful for us. I think primarily it's the actions that affect us. We're not really seeing issues pushing code or things like that. I'm not sure how other people are. No SVN, but I am curious if people have used other CI systems, or if there's anything, any thoughts people have on that. We don't have to get into it too deep now, but if you have thoughts about that, feel free to reach out to me. I'm kind of investigating and exploring options.
GitHub Actions is so convenient because it's so easy for people to find, and it's easy to integrate with the repos. We don't have to pay a lot of money for it. So there's so many things I like about it, but if it's unreliable and continues to be unreliable, that's could exact a pretty high toll in the long run. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
I have nothing to add that's useful there other than like it'd be really annoying if we had to move, but if we have to, we have to, and we should look at other options.
Yeah, I think there's other things about it too that are not summed up in this. I mean, I get emails from all of our jobs that fail, and I would say like weekly there's easily 20 or 30 or more jobs that just fail for random networking reasons and other random reasons, and it's a pain to have to look and see, oh well, why'd that fail this time? It's just wasting a lot of time, but you can't necessarily ignore it because 1 in 50 it's something legitimate.
And like maybe some of that's our stuff being flaky, but I don't know. I've seen
No.
a lot of instances that are definitely their flake. It's like they're supposed to populate some environment variable every time, and like 1 out of every 20 times it's not populated, and then it ruins everything, kind of stuff.
Yeah, these
There's that,
peers
yeah.
keep resetting the connections. Just see that like peer reset connection
Yes.
with some like IP address that's owned by their infrastructure.
Yeah, that's the one I was talking about. And then sometimes you'll go to like download, some tarball, that needs to be installed, and the file just is corrupt. It's just not downloaded. That happens frequently. So anyway, if people have thoughts, feel free to reach out. Partly venting, partly interested in what other options there are.
How much this has to do with the actual usage of Paketo? Like, I know other projects that use GitHub Actions, but like not quite to the same extent that Paketo does. So I think that also magnifies the issue. Like, there's a lot of automation built into the project around GitHub Actions. So like, even if 1 in 1,000 jobs are failing, you'll notice it more often here than any of the other projects do. But for what it's worth, like I also personally find GitHub Actions very it's easy to share things, like share reusable components in GitHub Actions, which is very hard to do in other CI systems unless you're self-hosting some random ticked-on instance or something of that sort. And then the other issue is just like security. There are just so many CI systems that are just really, really poor at managing secure environments. And given the fact that CI systems and CD systems run with such elevated permissions, it's just difficult to trust a bunch of them.
Especially for an open source project, right? Where you want to be validating like a random person's pull request. We used to have a self-hosted concourse instance back in the day, because that's sort of the lineage a lot of the VMware folks come out of, which I think we were able to use pretty efficiently because most of the people here are very familiar with concourse, but it's not great for large distributed projects that are doing PR validation. And you have to, maintain your own instance, and it uses a bunch of bespoke technologies. So I wouldn't want to go back in that direction, but maybe like hosting a Tecton instance, maybe.
I think the other good thing is that GitHub Actions, like the permissions around them, can be tied back to the user permission. So like if someone's a contributor or maintainer on the project, they also have permissions on the CI system, which is again something you have to figure out with the self-hosted system, like managing permissions for users on what they can do, cannot do, and like things like that.
Yeah, I would like to point out that efficiently using Concourse was a relative statement, that it's like more efficiently than previous CI systems we had to maintain. It still easily ate up days, if not weeks, of development time in any given year. It is not free to run, for sure.
We're doing all of our internal build pack work on Concourse. It is working quite nicely. But a lot of there's been a lot of development, sort of investment gone into creating custom resources and whatever else to kind of do what we need it to do. But it really sucks with pull request workflows. That's where it's hurting us at the moment.
I think GitHub is also scheduled to release like a blog post on why this happened. Right? A few threads, and they said that this is like they'll try to contain this, but this all like the March outage, at least one instance that just had sort of a loop with things retrying their database, just not being able to cope up with the load and just failing over and over again with their mitigation processes, not being able to cope up with the load. And they did say that they'll resolve this. So, oh, there it is. Okay, did not see that.
Check that out. I think one of the other things, I don't know, Sam, maybe you can talk to this, is that we have to get on the ARM bandwagon soon, and GitHub Actions don't have ARM workers. How's the upstream Buildpacks project handling that, since you all are using Actions as well?
I think Natalie would probably be a better person to answer this, but we just host self-hosted runners on Equinox, I believe, and then just use GitHub Actions. So GitHub Actions allow you to configure self-hosted runners. We just use that. That does mean that like, the self-hosted runners are a bit flaky. Every now and then a lifecycle PR will just not build for ARM, and then Natalie has to go kick it. But I'm guessing with the increased ARM adoption, GitHub at some point has to provide something. Like, but for now, the only option is self-hosted runners. CNCF has also got this like cluster of machines that they offer to projects, which
This is
they are
Packet.
what?
They used to have some like bare metal self-service system called Packet.
Yeah, I think
ARM also used to offer resources to open source projects that wanted to validate that they were built on ARM.
Interesting.
I think for us, like the biggest thing is mostly that we can build ARM Docker images. I'm not entirely convinced that we actually need runners running on ARM, mostly because like the things we end up building are things you can like cross compile. So we could cross compile like our Go binaries into ARM64 like architectures. The things we do need like something running on ARM for is like a Docker instance. So we probably could just like deploy like a fleet of just Docker daemons running somewhere in the cloud that we have our jobs point at, instead of needing to run like an entire GitHub runner stack on ARM.
I think we did something like that for Windows once in the CMB project. Like connecting to remote Docker hosts. I can double check on that. I think one of the things to keep in mind there is that the Docker daemon is not really good at multi-tenancy. So you have to think about the fact that whatever you're connecting to, like any of the jobs could be connecting to the same daemon, and what do they have access to, stuff like that.
also like sending local context and stuff like volume mounts and things are just not great when you're running a remote daemon. Like if you mount a volume with some local file paths, you have to take care of like sharing or like mapping it to the remote system as well.
Luckily, like the stuff we're sending is like mostly tiny sample applications that it's not like, you know, gigabytes of data.
But Pack mounts the local folder as a volume, right?
Right, the application source code.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the things we would actually need that would test stuff is like, you know, a handful of small text files.
Yeah, but you'll have to manage the remote sync to that machine, right? For the local volume to be mounted. Or am I missing something?
It's
I
not
thought
a bind mount. So like what happens, especially when you're building with Pack, is Pack creates a, like does a Docker volume create and then copies all your stuff
okay.
into the volume. So it should work basically the same way.
I thought it just mounted the local.
No, because you don't want the Buildpacks to actually mess with your local copy of the application, right?
Yeah. Forgot about that. So I was saying CNCF has this cluster offering, which any open source project can apply to. And they do provide Equinox runners there. So you can also just get stuff from CNCF, like even if you're not a CNCF project. There are, like you can just onboard using an issue. I know a bunch of non-CNCF projects that have onboarded to it. At some point, there were plans to create an automation system around the same repository that would automatically manage GitHub runners for you. It's just way low on their priority list. But you can still just get the hardware. They'll happily give you the hardware.
I think David said that his internet died potentially. So I don't know if he's going to rejoin, but I can just, you know, since I'm already talking, just see if anyone else has anything else they want to bring up. That looks like it's the end of the agenda that we have. Cool. Well, I think we can end the meeting then. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks. Bye-bye.